I think mentally he's in a good place. But I would say that we have 3 running backs on this team that we're going to utilize as much as possible. They're all big men. They can run. They're violent. They're physical. So I think once we get a chance to get the players in and see exactly like how they operate, I think every player is going to be happy with the way that we go about this offense, and I think he's going to be one of them.
All right, Sarah and Glenn talking about Breece Hall coming off a rough season, but still scope for him to bounce back. So we look at 31 through 40, headlined by new LA Ram Devontae Adams, Tirico looking for his own bounce back season.
Friend of the podcast.
Yeah, friend of the podcast. One-time friend of the podcast. JSN.
Also a friend of the podcast.
Also a friend of the podcast.
Yes,
also
absolutely.
a friend of mine as he had a starring role in Matthew getting absolutely screwed at the buzzer in our head-to-head matchup in fantasy last season. Marvin Harrison Jr., 34. Terry McLaurin. Breece Hall, who we'll talk about. Mike Evans, another eternal feature in the top 40. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. DK Metcalf, and then Rashee Rice, who is going to be one of the highest variance players in the NFL this season. But let's start off with Breece, Connor. So a lot of chat from Aaron Glenn. We got a lot of chat about running back workload in the offseason. But how many carries do you think Breece is going to be averaging next season?
That's what they're going to try to figure out because Breece never looked right last year. He wasn't available during OTAs for the most part. It felt like something was wrong then. And then during the season.
Maybe he was in Egypt.
He was not. They did have videos of him on the sideline.
The thing is, Connor, that he did look right sometimes.
That's the thing. Like the Steelers game.
I remember texting you during the second Bills game, like, wow, Breece looks really good.
Right.
It's like, this is just randomly just
It was
given
a
weeks.
flip a coin kind of season for Breece. And the only thing I could say from that answer with Aaron Glenn is he immediately pivoted to the 3 running backs they have. And another portion of that interview, they asked him about Garrett Wilson. And all he did was talk glowingly about Garrett Wilson. He wasn't like, well, we have Alan Lazard and we have Malachi Corley.
Man, I believe what he's saying.
Me too.
Although, could it be that he's watched Alan Lazard? And
Probably.
I don't know, it's not a while.
Let me ask you one quick question. Opening day, is Breece Hall on the Jets?
Yeah, at this point. I think it would have happened during the draft.
Okay.
I think so.
Is there a chance that Breece Hall's inconsistency last year was partially he wasn't fully healthy and partially the offense was a disaster?
It was, but partially he's got to keep the ball off the ground too.
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn's not going to deal with that.
I'm with you, but like
You're right though.
But I just felt like that offense was a mess. And worse, that not only was it a mess, but it was an inconsistent mess because it was Hackett, and then they got rid of Hackett, and Rodgers has a big say, and the whole thing was just a effing disaster.
It was.
And it's why they've got a whole new regime there, and who knows how. And so here's Breece Hall. Maybe he's not being used correctly, and he's not fully healthy, and it's just the offensive line was a disaster, which they made improvements to that. Like, am I crazy to think Breece Hall could actually be a value this year?
You're not, because number one, this offensive line's really good on paper.
Yeah.
Like after taking Armand Membu, this is a complete offensive line, and Mason Taylor. They didn't have a tight end that could block last year, so now they have a tight end that can block. So okay, you feel good about that. The play calling has to be better. Like we've never seen Tanner Engstrand call plays, and we know he's better. than Daniel
Doesn't matter.
Hackett. It does not matter. So that's a positive. They're going to run the ball a ton. A ton because Justin Fields is back there. And Justin Fields can throw a lot to the running back when that first read isn't there as well.
For sure, and we've seen this so many times that a mobile quarterback, especially when they're running RPOs, just opens up lanes for running backs.
Which didn't exist last year.
Right, exactly. And so
one last thing schematically, because of Rodgers' Achilles, I'm assuming, they ran out of shotgun or the pistol, it felt like 99% of the time.
Sure.
Getting Fields under center is going to be so good for Breece or whoever the running back is. That demolished the Jets' running game last year before they ever had a chance.
Yep. I remember, Lawrence, that Breece Hall game in Denver when he did his ACL. And I think just before that, he ripped off like a 77-yard touchdown. And I remember when he ripped off that run, I was thinking, like, this guy's going to be the number 1 running back in fantasy next year because that's the level of player that he is. And do you think maybe it's just gone too far, that it's just been a couple strange years?
I think he stood that good because we saw at the end of last season, not last season, but the season before last in the snow when he took 30-something touches and made almost 200 yards. That I think the thing that we don't mention enough is that the two guys, and I say two guys, and Aaron Glenn talked about them, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, those are good young running backs.
They like Davis a lot. Yeah.
Davis is really good. Like, couldn't even believe the Jets picked another guy because it was like he's good. But Like, I think that part has to be mentioned too. So they will use them to the extent of how much. That's the part we're trying to figure out. But I do believe him when he says we're using all 3 running backs.
Yeah, hard to imagine him getting the kind of workload that we've seen previously. But I also don't think Breece Hall's a guy that needs a massive workload to provide, significant fantasy value.
Yep. All right, let's jump to number 40, Matthew. Rashee Rice, who moved up from 47 to 40, jumped ahead of Xavier Worthy. What's the reason for that?
Well, it's a couple of reasons why. Number one, so everything we keep hearing out of Kansas City, we've heard it from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and just everything we hear from the beats is that Rashee Rice looks like Rashee Rice. Looks like he's fully recovered from the injury again, he got injured very early in the season, so he's had a full year basically, or he'll have had a full year by the time the season starts. So first off, you feel really good about just sort of where the health is. And the other concern on Rashee Rice was, of course, he's got this legal issue off the field. There's going to be a trial at some point, and doesn't look good for him. And so the thought process is, well, he's going to get suspended. And I think that's still the case, but the way the NFL usually works, almost always, is that they won't suspend a player until their legal situation is solved. So, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So Rashee Rice is going to get his day in court, and then if and when he is found guilty, then, and depending on the severity of the crime and what he is found guilty of, once a jury of his peers have heard all the evidence, blah blah blah, then they're going to the NFL. I'm not trying to dismiss the seriousness of the allegation, but just that the way that process is going to work is that once a jury has heard all the evidence and made a ruling, then the NFL will make a determination as to whether or not he should be suspended, and if so, for how long. And right now it feels like that case keeps getting kicked, and so it feels like that case may not be heard until 2027, 2026, which means Rashee Rice will be available for all of 2025. And you just saw those numbers on the screen there. Just 3 full games prior to his injury last year, 34% target share. He was averaging over 21 fantasy points per game. He was the second best wide receiver in fantasy. Now, we've seen the emergence of Xavier Worthy. But by the way, Travis Kelce continues to decrease his in-season usage because they want to save him for the postseason. So Rashee Rice is either 1A or 1B compared to what we think of Worthy with one of the best quarterbacks and offenses in football.
If we find out today that we know he won't get suspended until 2026, where would he go in drafts right now? Because right now it's looking fourth round he's going. Where would he, because like you said, the 3 games, 34% target share, you saw it immediately in week 1. Like Patrick, he was open. I was like, this dude going to have 1,500 yards this year.
Now, so I'm at wide receiver 21 because, again, they do have Xavier Worthy. They brought back Hollywood Brown. I think he has more target competition this year than he did in week 1 of last year, where it was
Hollywood wasn't playing.
Right. Hollywood wasn't playing.
Worthy wasn't what he is now.
Right. So I'd argue and they do like to spread it around, but crazy talented player who clearly has a rapport with Mahomes and fully healthy. So I'm at 21, and that ranking assumes that there's a very limited chance that he gets suspended this season.
Yeah, offshoot of all that, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have a monster bounce-back season. I think that just with Rashee Rice back, with Worthy developing, with the offensive line, that's some young guys on that line who get better, I think that he looks more like the MVP level Patrick Mahomes, the fantasy monster Patrick Mahomes, and these two blah years in a row statistically from Mahomes, even though he did win the Super Bowl in the first year and then made it back in the second year. I think Mahomes is going to bounce back.
But I also think, we've talked about this all the time on the show, that I think people sometimes in fantasy analysis just forget we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people that have egos and tempers and emotions. And so Patrick Mahomes, the last time we saw Patrick Mahomes, he had literally the worst game of his career.
He's embarrassed.
On the biggest stage possible. And so if you don't think Mahomes is coming into the season with a chip on his shoulder saying, like, okay, I ain't that guy.
Right. He done cut the mohawk off, new haircut.
He is ready. Yep. He's ready. Yep. I know the kid in Nebraska's got to keep up.
If I see that boy cut, if he get the same fade that Patrick Mahomes got now,
we're going to have a conversation.
Come on, man. Yeah. Come on, dog.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.